yourself, whoa, I actually almost fell for that crap.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about summertime, one of the best things I like about summertime, and it's very politically correct, but as the weather gets warmer, the girls wear less clothes. Okay? I'm not a young man, but I'm still a man, okay? And I don't care how old you are. Maybe if you're a kid, that's different. But I'm talking about if you're from puberty to the grave. When a heterosexual man sees a good-looking gal in a tank top, short pants, swinging it down, walking down the street, he's going to say, wow, I like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Now, there are people listening to this podcast that they're looking for the off button, thinking I'm just a sexist pig. There's a difference between saying, wow, that's a good looking gal there, and saying, man, I'd sure like to, you know what.
So the scene,
big difference.
The South City scene that I was involved in 10 years ago, the people would get 100% what you're saying. South City today, even though they know you're telling the truth, would want to crucify you.
Exactly.
It's the same place. Like 10 years ago, like the burlesque scene and the rockabilly scene and the mock scene we're in was able to unify respecting women and also understanding men's role in being excited about women's sexuality.
Exactly.
And it gave women the chance to be excited about men's sexuality.
That's right.
So there was a feminism there, but it wasn't this rigid, intellectually authoritarian nonsense that we have now, where every man is a predator, where every white person is a bad guy. There are people talking about, if men are just naturally, misogynistic, and you have to treat every man like a misogynist. So if you're treating every man like a misogynist, why are you mad at Donald Trump? If you're treating every man like a misogynist, there's a school of thought of people I knew 4 years ago that said every single straight man should be treated like a sexual predator.
I've heard and I've read things like
that.
And
I've known people who said people who are not like that. So what happens when you're confronted with a person who is like that? You're saying there's no difference between your friends who aren't sexual predators and a sexual predator. So you're actually helping the sexual predator.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with racists. Oh, all white people are racist. So what happens when you meet a guy that's literally like, I believe in violence towards black people for a revolution? I saw this movie, Antebellum, and I won't give it away. Mm-hmm. But Antebellum shows there's a very big difference between evil white people who want to hurt black people and white people who grow up with their own historical and personal perspective prejudices. Mm-hmm. And to say that there's no difference between a white person who's trying to understand where you're coming from and not getting certain things because they're not black and you're not white, and a person who is like, I think black people, we wish you should go back to black people being slaves. And there are some white people who think that way. Not that many, but there are some.
Not enough to make a difference, and the mainstream doesn't pay attention to them. But you're right, there are some.
There's so many intellectuals, mostly either the overwhelming majority of them are white progressives. But then there's also black intellectual writers who sell crap to them because they make money selling this nonsense to liberal white people who want to check other white people and make them feel guilty so they can have control over them. And I think that's the number one theme. Whether it's mask up, whether it's you can't say this or that, Dave Chappelle.
It's control.
It's control.
Yeah.
And something is going on where people in positions of authority have decided we need a little bit more control. I think it does have something to do with Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump has destabilized our perception of government so much that people, whether it's owners of football teams, whether it's owners of companies, whether it's people in school, like, hold on. Now, how do we sell people control while also having sold everyone on you want to be an individual and anti-establishment? You can't sell people on control when you said Bernie Sanders is cool because he's anti-establishment. So the only way you can get people to accept control is to be like, you're going to die if you do anything outside your house. And I'm not saying that the pandemic isn't real, but I am saying that there is a desire to bring things back to square that people in authority are using this situation to do. It doesn't mean that being safe is stupid. I'm just saying that there's another side of it to where it's like, hey, you guys need to listen to Dr. Fauci. Like, I'm sorry, I listen to him and he just sounds like a con man to me. I'm just being honest, okay?
Well, it's because he seems to say something different every week. He's not consistent.
He's not consistent, and he's very smug about it.
The whole thing, and I agree with what you're saying, 100%. It's about control, and the whole pandemic thing. Everything can be simplified. I think everything can be simplified.
Absolutely,
this whole pandemic can be simplified because when it first came out, the first thing you heard was, "Look, here's what you need to do. You need to really be diligent about washing your hands.
Right,
okay,
right.
Don't go to your face. Stay away from crowds. Maybe don't. If you're going to the store, maybe you go and the wife stays home. Stay away from people. Just be smart about this because what we want to do is flatten the curve so that when people get sick, we don't overload the hospitals and the doctors can treat them and make them better. As far as I'm concerned, we're done.
We should be done. Yeah, we are.
If you do that, okay, here's a restaurant. There's a restaurant that's jam-packed to the gills. If I walk into a restaurant and there's too many people in that restaurant, I'm going to turn around and walk away. I'm not going in there. But if somebody
I did that before the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. But people just need to be smart. People need to be smart about what they do. Where I work, we follow CDC guidelines. If you're in the building, you got to wear a mask. Except if you're at your cubicle by yourself, then hang it from your ear. If somebody comes up to talk to you, put it on and talk to them. When you come in, you sanitize your hands, you get your temperature taken. And just you try your best to stay away from people. A handful of people are working from home because they can do their job from home, and there's less people around now. Guys in the shop, they stay away from the other people on the machines. It's just being smart. And we've had a handful of people that have gotten sick, but not many. It's just being smart. The silliness they have in California and New York is just ridiculous. Chicago the same way.
Right.
It's ridiculous. I think you're right. I think it's just about control.
You know, and I watched Dr. Fauci talk to Rand Paul. And I think Rand Paul normally was getting the better of him. This time Fauci was ready for him. And Rand didn't have his stuff. And I heard Fauci, and basically Fauci was saying New York has 1% positives because they followed these CDC guidelines. And Rand Paul came back and said, well, or could it be because they've gotten close to herd immunity? So Fauci turns around and goes, well, they only have 22%. And then he says something very interesting that Rand Paul was not ready for. That he says, if you were going to say that you'd have anything close to herd immunity at 22%, you'd be alone. And Rand Paul was like, Rand Paul replies, well, then there's other people say something about a third of people convey immunity. And Fauci said something that is very interesting and shows why I can't relate to most of the people I used to hang out with. Fauci says, I want to dispute that. Now, Dr. Fauci is the head of the NHS, NIH. So, okay, you should be able to dispute this. This is your field. So you go and tear Rand Paul apart. I'm sitting there listening. He goes, there is a study that says that having a cold won't convey COVID immunity. And people are like, wow, he really gave it to Rand Paul. He schooled him. A study.
Yeah, by who?
He didn't mention. So I found it. I looked over it, and there's one study I found. I think I found a study. He lied.
Really?
So what the study says is there's no evidence that you won't catch a cold the next year. The study said, unless you're a kid, that you will have immunity if you have a cold. That a third of the people will have immunity for 4 or 8 months. The study was saying if you'd have permanent immunity. Dr. Fauci sounds more like a media, more of a media manipulator to me than an epidemiologist. Because he cited a study that's on the internet. Why does he need to study studies on the internet?
He should have his own.
That's what I'm saying. He never gives his own work. If you notice that, he goes, there's a study that says kids are getting Kawasaki disease, Kawasaki-like disease. Mm-hmm. When's the last time you heard about that?
Almost never.
Because it was BS.
Yeah.
It was debunked before he got it. Here's another thing about Fauci that got me. Fauci said he changed on masks because they didn't know about, they want to get it to the health providers, and they didn't know about asymptomatic spread. That's a lie. Because Dr. Gupta said Donald Trump killed 70, this is what they said, Donald Trump caused 70% more people to die than they should have been because he knew about symptomatic spread because we had a paper on it on February 7th. So if Donald Trump should have been making masks for everyone on February 7th, why did Dr. Fauci say that there was no need for a mask until April 3rd?
Yeah, well, see,
because he's a con man.
Yeah, and he did the same thing with the with when he was in charge of the AIDS study.
Yeah. Oh yes, I remember that.
He did the same thing where he. I don't want to misspeak here. I don't want to slander anybody, but basically, he had mentioned that AIDS is not a homosexual spread disease. It's a heterosexual spread disease. Because
I remember that.
Because he felt that if he, and it was, sure, it could be spread heterosexually or homosexually, but for the most part, it was spread homosexually.
I was involved in all that.
Yeah. You mean you studied it and so
I was a political science project in my senior year
in school,
and we were assigned to local representatives to because that was a hot topic. That was a huge political topic in 1992.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
And we took the moderate conservative position, and another people took the far right position, which was basically don't have sex and you won't get AIDS and don't be gay, and that was their presentation. The most rigidly anti-science one was from the far left ones, because they were trying to say, because what we had found was we went and talked to we even went to a lab and looked at the. They let us look at the viruses and all that kind of shit, and you had to put on the coats and the hazmat suits and all that. So what they had determined at the time, and this is why, and partly why I don't mess with Fauci, because you're right, we were dealing with that. And I remember his name, and at the time, it's funny, the gay community hated Fauci for that, because he did that, but then he locked the gay people out of the negotiation for the AIDS virus. Then he turns around and goes, "Look, ta-da!
Yeah,
I figured out how to save you guys."
Exactly. Yeah, I'm your savior.
He's a con man, but anyway.
But he did that because these were his words. He said, "Look, if we put this out as a strictly homosexual disease, nobody's going to care, and we're not going to get the funding."
That's exactly what he said. And the LGBT community at the time was actually, they weren't politically correct. They were like, yes, it is. Like the people that I know that we interview who are LGBT did not have a problem with what we found. And what we found was it wasn't that it was a gay. So this is just to sum up what, and this is confirmed if you look up the science on it. It's not that it's a gay disease in and of itself. What it is that it can be spread through heterosexual sex, but it's a lot less likely to be spread than through anal sex, because anal sex, there's a couple different factors. One, there's a certain immune impact that happens if you have repeated anal sex. And two, there's the blood to semen. There's the extra added situation of blood.
Right.
That makes it more prevalent, because that's the type of sex that, and they say it's gay men.
Right.
Because there was a disparity between how many gay men and gay women, and particularly black gay men were, for various reasons, finding themselves more likely to be infected. And the gay community at the time, I remember, was really mad at him for doing that. They're saying, hey, man, you're killing us.
Yeah. Because
just tell the truth. There's nothing wrong with telling the truth. That the fact is that our behavior puts us in a risk group. So Dr. Fauci, he did the gay community a terrible, and he basically lied.
Yeah.
That's pretty scary.
But his excuse was, look, sure, I lied, but I had to. It was the whole end justifies the means, and I've never been an end justifies the means guy.
We should be terrified that a person who did that is in charge of this situation now.
Yeah, and it kind of has been for a long time.
For like 40 years.
Yes, exactly.
But something's weird because even back then, I remember, I didn't